when there are losses that do not have funerals. Losses where no one brings flowers, no casseroles, no soft-voiced neighbors asking, "How are you holding up?" Because to everyone else, nothing happened. No one died, no tragedy occurred. And yet, a daughter wakes up one morning and realizes, "My mother is still alive, but I have already begun to grieve her." That is the kind of story I bring you today. My name is Clara. Some of you call me Grandma Clara. Others, the keeper of the stories no one wanted to say out loud. I have lived long enough to know that some losses are invisible until you finally say them aloud. Last week, I told you the story of a woman who learned to forgive herself after 20 years of believing her pain was too small to mention. If you have not heard it, go and listen when this one is through. You will notice the stories speak to each other. You will notice they are really parts of the same truth. Because women do not break alone. They break in patterns. They break in echoes. They break in the same rooms their mothers broke in. And today, I must tell you about Lily. Lily is 31 now, a grown woman, a woman with a job, a life, a home far away from where she was raised, a woman who laughs, who loves, who pays her bills, who cooks her own meals. But somewhere inside her, there is a child who still waits for her mother to come back. Not physically, no. Her mother is still alive, 71 years old, breathing, moving, talking, but gone. Gone in the way a person disappears while still sitting across the room from you. Gone in the way you can hear their voice, but it does not reach you anymore. Gone in the way someone turns cold, not in an instant, but through a slow winter that never thaws. Lily remembers her mother in warm colors, the smell of onions frying in butter, the softness of blankets on movie nights, laughter that reached the eyes, hands that traced her hair when she fell asleep on her mother's lap. Her mother was tender. That is the important part to understand. She was not always this way, because there is a cruelty that wounds differently when it was once kindness. There is a grief that cuts deeper when it remembers softness. If a mother is cold from the beginning, a child learns to grow armor. But when a mother changes, when she turns, the child does not grow armor. The child grows questions. What did I do? Why am I suddenly too much? Is it my fault she stopped loving me the same? When Lily was 14, her mother's voice shifted. Not all at once, not with a scream, not with a slammed door, but with sentences that sounded like small stings until there were too many to count. You're difficult. You're spoiled. You ask for too much. 14. The age when a girl needs the softness the most. The age when the world becomes sharp and the home must be the cushion. But her home began to thin, began to harden, began to bruise her. Her mother began to look at her not as a daughter, but as someone taking something from her. Love turned transactional. Affection turned conditional. Warmth turned into watchfulness. Her mother listened at the doors.
She picked up the other phone in the house to hear Lily speaking. She checked her messages. She searched for reasons to be disappointed, to be offended, to be wounded by the existence of her own child. And Lily learned something that is far too common in daughters. When I need love, I must become smaller to deserve it. She learned to apologize before asking anything at all. She learned silence. She learned to swallow questions. She learned to disappear in her own home so her mother would not accuse her of being too much. Do you know how many women I have sat with who learned to apologize for simply needing love? More than I wish I could count. And when Lily began to bleed for the first time, the moment every child should be held, guided, reassured, she was alone. Her mother had not told her what it meant, had not prepared her, had not been present in the way a mother must. So Lily, a child, believed she had broken, that something was wrong with her body, with herself. That was the first death, though she did not know it then, the death of safety. Years passed. Lily grew up, moved away, made a life, made choices, loved people. At 31, she lives far across the country. She picks up the phone to call home, and every time she does, she braces herself. Because now her mother does not hide her cruelty. She speaks it plain. She insults Lily. She insults Lily's partner. She insults Lily's sister. And when challenged, she laughs and says, "You're too sensitive. Stop getting offended. You're overreacting." Oh, I have heard that tone. I know it well. It is not the voice of truth. It is the voice of someone who refuses to take responsibility for the harm they inflict. It is the voice of someone who would rather deny the wound than face the mirror. And so Lily and her sister find themselves in quiet grief. A grief without a funeral. A grief with no name to speak out loud. Her sister said one morning, "I just needed my mom today." And her mother replied with cruelty about her teeth. Do you understand the violence of that? A daughter opens her heart and the mother throws salt. That is not age. That is not confusion. That is not memory loss. That is a heart that has forgotten how to be gentle. And Lily remembers something that still hurts to speak. A breakup. She was young, heartbroken, quiet for days. Her mother looked at her and said, "Is that why he left? Because you're boring?" A knife disguised as a sentence. A wound delivered with a tone as casual as asking for the time. And then, as always, the rewriting. "I never said that. You're imagining things. You're being dramatic." There it is, the gaslighting, the erasure, the rewriting of the daughter's reality. Not to protect Lily, but to protect the mother from herself. Listen to me now. When a mother begins to erase her daughter's truth, she has already disappeared. Not died, but disappeared. This is the grief of the living. It does not have a grave. It does not have closure. It does not have an ending you can point to. But it is real. And today, we will walk through it together. Take my hand. Let's begin.
Let us go back. Not to the end, not to the harsh words, not to the winter of her mother's heart. No, we return to the beginning, to the warmth. Because every story like this has warmth. That is why the loss hurts. If there had never been gentleness, there would be no grief to name. Lily remembers her childhood in soft colors. Curtains swaying in summer breeze, the kitchen smelling of garlic and onions sizzling in oil, her mother humming while stirring a pot, hips swaying gently like a lullaby without words. The low sound of the television in the other room, a comedy they had watched 100 times. There were evenings when Lily would curl up on the couch, head on her mother's thigh, and her mother would stroke her hair absent-mindedly, like love was just a natural reflex. And for a long time it was. Her mother had her at 40, older than most women in her circles. People said she was lucky. A late blessing, they called Lily, a gift she hadn't expected. She held her close, fed her well, sang to her, kept her home full of softness. But life changes people. And sometimes life does not have a single moment we can point to and say, this is where she broke. Sometimes a heart unravels the same way a sweater does. Slowly, one thread at a time, so quietly that no one notices until the cold gets in. When Lily turned 14, her world was already shifting. Her body, her voice, her emotions, her understanding of herself. She needed her mother, not less, but more. And yet, that was when her mother began to retreat. Not physically. She was still there, in the kitchen, in the living room, in the house. But emotionally, she had begun to disappear. The first sign was not anger. It was sharpness. A tone, a sigh, a look that said, "Why are you harder to love now?" She did not say it aloud. Oh no, mothers rarely do. But children feel it like a temperature drop in the air. One day Lily asked if she could go to a friend's house after school. A simple request. A normal request. But her mother exhaled a long, exhausted breath, as if Lily had asked her to move a mountain. "You're so difficult," her mother said. "Always wanting something." Lily froze. It was small, just a moment, just one sentence, but it planted a seed. Maybe love is harder to earn now. Maybe I have become too much. At that age, most girls are told they are too dramatic, too sensitive, too emotional. But Lily did not cry. She did not argue. She simply folded inward. And once a child learns to fold themselves smaller, they rarely learn to unfold again easily. A few weeks later, her first period arrived. She was at home, in the bathroom. She stared at the blood and thought she was dying. The silence was heavy. The fear was still and cold. She called for her mother, voice trembling, unsure if she would be comforted or chastised. Her mother came, looked at her, and sighed again. Another sigh. Not fear, not empathy, not recognition of a sacred moment every girl deserves to be guided through. Just annoyance. "Oh, for God's sake," she said, reaching under the cabinet. "No one taught me either. You'll figure it out." She handed Lily a pad, closed the door, walked away. Do you know how many daughters remember the moment they bleed for the first time? Every one of them. Because it is not just a biological change. It is a doorway into womanhood. And the person who stands at the doorway matters. Lily stood there, alone. Her body was changing. Her world was changing. Her mother had already begun to step back from her. And Lily did something that would shape the rest of her life. She learned to keep her pain quiet. Not because she wanted to, but because she learned, quickly, painfully, that asking for help came with a price. A sigh, an eye roll, a tone that made her feel like love had conditions now. So she stopped asking. She cleaned up quietly. She told no one. She went back to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, hands clenched in her lap.
And she promised herself something no child should ever have to promise. I won't need anything from anyone. But grief is not the only thing that grows in silence. Loneliness does too. She began to call friends more. She began to laugh louder outside the home. She began to seek comfort in the world because she could no longer find it inside her house. Her mother noticed, and instead of being softened by Lily's distance, she grew jealous of it. So she started listening on phone calls, picking up the second phone line, asking who Lily was talking to, what she was saying, what she was doing, who she thought she was becoming. A mother who once held her close now watched her like a threat, not because Lily had changed, but because her mother had begun to fear something she could not name. The moment her children no longer needed her, the moment time moved forward without her, the moment aging became impossible to ignore. So she controlled what she could. And Lily became something she never meant to be. A mirror her mother could not bear to look into. Because Lily was growing, and her mother was fading. And instead of grieving her own fear, she redirected it outward, onto the easiest target, the daughter who would still love her, no matter how much it hurt. And Lily did love her. That was the tragedy, the quiet one, the one that lingers, even now. Even when her mother began to call her spoiled, even when she belittled her, even when she made her feel small and ashamed and undeserving of tenderness, Lily kept trying to earn back the softness, trying to become the version of herself that her mother once loved, trying to shrink herself into the outline of a memory that no longer existed. That is what daughters do. They try. Long after it stops being fair, long after it stops being healthy, long after the mother has already left in every way except physically, because daughters are not grieving the person in front of them. They are grieving the mother they remember, the mother who no longer returns. Years later, when Lily left home, she thought time would heal it. Distance would soften it. But sometimes distance does not heal a wound. Sometimes it simply gives it space to ache. Her mother aged, and with age came sharpness, not wisdom, meanness, not reflection, bitterness, not softness, cruelty spoken without hesitation, apologies withheld. And when confronted, always the same refrain: you're imagining it. You're being sensitive. Stop acting like a child. And so Lily learned to grieve someone who was still alive. Not at once, but slowly, in pieces, like petals falling from a flower that used to be beautiful. That is how this story began, not with an explosion, but with a fading, and it is in that fading that the deepest wounds live.
Let me stop here for a moment. Not because the story is finished, but because you need to breathe. Sometimes, when we listen to stories like Lily's, we feel a strange pressure building in the chest, a heaviness we do not have words for, a sadness we cannot explain. And you might be wondering, why does this hurt me when it isn't my story? But I know why. Because some of you listening recognize yourselves in this. Not because your mother was cruel, not because your childhood was the same, but because you remember the moment someone you loved changed. You remember the quiet shift, the moment the warmth cooled, the moment the tone sharpened. You remember the first time you thought, did I do something wrong? And when you are young, You do not question the adults in your life. You question yourself. You rewrite yourself to fit inside someone else's shrinking love. Even now, some of you apologize before speaking. Some of you brace before asking for anything. Some of you feel guilt simply for wanting softness because someone taught you once that your needs were burdens, that your feelings were dramatic, that your sadness was too much, that your voice took up too much space. And now you fold yourself smaller in friendships and relationships, even when you're alone. I want to speak to that part of you. Listen carefully. You were never too much. You were a child who needed love, a teenager who needed gentleness, a young woman who needed guidance, a soul who needed shelter. That is not neediness, that is human. But when a mother, the first mirror we ever look into, begins to reflect something distorted, we do not see the distortion. We believe the reflection. We believe, I ask for too much. I am hard to love. If I were easier, softer, quieter, she would still love me the same. Let me say this with the full weight of an old woman who has lived long enough to see generations of daughters break under this lie. Love does not withdraw when a child grows. Love does not shrink away when a daughter becomes herself. Love does not turn cruel when life gets hard. When love becomes sharp, when home becomes unsafe, when warmth becomes cold, that is not your fault. That is a wound in the mother, not the daughter. You did not cause it. You could not fix it. You were never meant to. Some of you listening are trying to mother your mothers now, trying to be patient, trying to stay calm, trying to explain, trying to earn back a softness that once felt endless. And I need to tell you something you may not want to hear. You cannot love someone back into being who they used to be if they have chosen not to remember how to be gentle. You can grieve it, you can miss it, you can ache for it, but you cannot recreate it because the love you are reaching for is not the love that exists now. It is memory. It is childhood. It is what was. The grief Lily carries is real because it is grief for someone living. That is the most complicated grief we know. You cannot bury it. You cannot visit a grave. You cannot accept condolences or hold a service. You must simply learn to walk with the absence of someone who still breathes. And that is a grief that takes years to name. I speak firmly, not to harden your heart, but to steady your spine. Because the world will tell Lily, she's your mother. You only get one. You should forgive. You should be patient. She's getting older. You'll regret it when she's gone. But listen to me. There is a difference between regret and responsibility. You are not responsible for repairing a bond someone else broke. You are not responsible for swallowing cruelty just because it comes from family. You are not responsible for setting yourself on fire to keep someone warm. Lily did not stop loving her mother. She simply stopped expecting the mother she remembered to return. There is a quiet strength in that, a painful, necessary strength. And maybe, just maybe, some of you needed to hear that today. We are not done. Now we return to the story.
We return to the moment where the grief becomes clear. Not loud, not sudden, but unmistakable. We return to the phone calls, the insults, the rewriting of reality. The sister who reaches out in hope and receives cruelty instead. We return to the moment Lily realizes the mother I miss is not the mother who stands in front of me now. And once you see that truth, you can never unsee it. Let us continue.
You know, there's something that hurts quietly, something that doesn't scream, something that doesn't make a scene. It's the pain of realizing someone you love stopped seeing you. Not physically, not with their eyes, but with their heart. That's what happened to this daughter. One day she realized her mother could look at her, but could no longer look into her. We move forward in time now. The daughter is older, living far away, trying to build a life of her own. But distance, it doesn't always protect you, because the ache you carry inside, that ache travels, even across the country. The daughter wakes up some mornings, and she misses her mother. Not the mother she has now, but the one she used to have. The one who laughed in the kitchen, who made warm meals, who tucked blankets around her when she was sick. But the present version of her mother, the one who snaps and mocks and turns tenderness into ammunition, that mother feels like a stranger wearing a familiar face. Grandma Clara, quietly. And that's the worst kind of loss, dear. The kind where the person is still alive, but the relationship is gone. It's grief with no funeral, no closure, no ending. Just waiting, hoping, hurting, repeating. One day, the daughter's sister calls her. Her voice is trembling. Not loud, not dramatic, just tired. She says, "I just needed Mom today." And her mother, instead of listening, instead of holding space, instead of being gentle, she looks at her daughter and says, "Your teeth look ugly." Just like that. Cold, sharp, unnecessary. Not because it was true, but because the mother had forgotten how to care first and speak second. And then, when confronted, she didn't apologize, she didn't soften, she didn't say, "Sweetheart, I didn't mean to hurt you." No, she said, "You're overreacting." A phrase that can twist a knife while pretending to be innocent. You see, when someone hurts you and then tells you it's your fault for being hurt, they are not just wounding you, they are erasing your reality. That is a special kind of cruelty. Whether intentional or born of loneliness, bitterness, age, or fear, the result is the same. A daughter who reaches out for comfort and finds a wall of thorns instead of arms. The narrator breathes slowly. The sound isn't dramatic, it's heavy. And so the daughters learn to talk to each other instead, not their mother. Because sometimes your sibling becomes the only person who remembers the version of your parent that was good, the version you both lost. They become the witness to your story, the proof that you didn't imagine the warmth, the love, the softness that once existed. Because memory can be cruel. It can make you question yourself. Did she ever love me the way I remember? Did I imagine those good years? Was I always too sensitive? But when you have someone who lived it too, who saw the same version of the mother before the change, you are no longer alone. And that is how the daughter survived together. But even then, even after all the hurt, something deeper remains, something hard to admit out loud. The daughter still wants her mother, not the mother she has, but the one she lost, the one who felt safe, the one who saw her. Grandma Clara pauses. Her next words land softly, but hit deeply. It's a very human thing to long for someone who can't be what they once were, to grieve a person who is still breathing, to love someone even when loving them hurts. There comes a time in every person's life when they must understand something difficult, something uncomfortable, something that changes the way the heart holds love. You cannot make someone be the version of themselves that they used to be, not even your mother. The daughter tried. She tried to talk softly. She tried to be patient. She tried to avoid the topics that made her mother snap like a frayed wire. She tried to say the right words and hold the right posture and ask in the right tone. But no matter what she did, her mother's voice always cut, like she was defending herself from enemies that did not exist, like her love had rusted, like her heart had grown tired of being open and sealed itself shut. And then comes the guilt. Because how dare you grieve someone who is still breathing? How dare you feel abandoned when she is still here? How dare you acknowledge the absence when the world would point to her body and say, "But look, she's right there." But the heart knows. It knows the difference between presence and connection, between a parent who exists and a parent who shows up. And the daughter realized she has been mourning a living person. There is a name for this kind of grief. It is called ambiguous loss. Loss without death, pain without goodbye, love without safety. It is the heaviest kind because there is no ending to make peace with. You are always waiting, always hoping, always reaching for a hand that no longer reaches back. But then, something else begins. Something quiet, something slow, something brave. Acceptance. Not acceptance of mistreatment, not acceptance of cruelty, not acceptance of holding on to someone who only hurts you. No. Acceptance that you cannot love someone into being gentle again. Acceptance that the past cannot be recreated. Acceptance that your heart deserves to be treated with tenderness, even by yourself, especially by yourself. And so, the daughter begins to do the hardest thing a child can ever do. She starts learning how to love her mother from a distance, not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of self-protection. Because sometimes the only way to keep the love alive is to stop letting it be wounded. Love does not always look like closeness. Sometimes love looks like boundaries. Sometimes love looks like silence. Sometimes love looks like choosing peace, even when your heart aches for the past. And that choice, that shift, that understanding is where healing begins. There are moments in life where the soul feels very, very young, no matter our age, no matter our wisdom, no matter how long we've walked this earth. Sometimes we are still just children looking for our mother's hand, even when we are grown, even when we are strong, even when we have built our own life, our own home, our own heart. Some part of us waits for the sound of her voice saying, "I'm here. You're not alone. You're my child, and I love you." When that voice is gone, even though the person remains, the silence is louder than any grief. But hear me, you are not wrong for missing what used to be. You are not weak for wanting softness. You are not dramatic for hurting. Your pain is the proof that you have loved deeply, and that is nothing to be ashamed of. Lily learned something in the quiet years, not from arguments, not from begging, not from trying to be good enough to earn her mother's warmth again, but from letting go of the idea that love must look like it used to. She started calling her mother only when she felt steady. She ended conversations when the tone turned sharp. She stopped trying to explain her heart to someone who had no room left to hold it. She began to visit as a guest, not a child in need. She remembered memories, the good ones, without expecting them to return. This is not abandoning. This is preserving. The same way you do not hold a flower so tightly that the petals fall apart in your hands. Grandma Clara, gentle, deliberate. Let me tell you something many grown children never hear. You are allowed to grieve a living parent. You are allowed to protect your heart. You are allowed to want peace. You are allowed to love from far away. Love does not fade just because the relationship changes. Sometimes love grows kinder once the distance softens the blade. Lily began to fill the empty spaces, not with resentment, not with bitterness, but with other kinds of love. The kind offered by friendships that feel like home, the kind offered by quiet mornings with her own thoughts, the kind offered by her sister who understood every unspoken wound. And slowly the ache did not disappear, but it began to hurt less loudly. Grandma Clara, soft, trembling. Some stories do not end with reunion. Some mothers do not return to the warmth they once had. But that does not mean love died. It only changed shape. Lily did not lose her mother. She lost a version of her mother. And she learned to love the woman who remained without expecting her to be what she once was. That is maturity. That is compassion. That is grief, all held in the same trembling hands. So if someone listening right now feels this same heartbreak, if your mother is still alive yet somehow gone, if your childhood feels closer to you than the woman who raised you, if your heart aches for a softness that is no longer there, come sit by the fire with us. You are not alone. You are not ungrateful. You are not wrong. You are simply grieving a love that changed without warning. And it's okay to say, I miss the mother I used to have. Grandma Clara, firm, loving. You are allowed to take care of yourself now. You are allowed to be your own comfort, your own shelter, your own warm place to land. Your story is not over because someone changed. Your life continues. Your heart heals. Your love adapts. The child who once needed a mother grows into a woman who becomes one for herself.
There comes a moment at the end of every story where the storyteller simply rests her hands. Not because the tale is finished, but because the heart needs time to breathe. I close this journal now. The ink is still wet with Lily's grief, her love, her letting go, her quiet strength, a daughter learning to mourn a mother who still lives. And that is a heavy kind of goodbye. But before the fire burns low tonight, I want to whisper something to you. You who are still listening, still breathing, still holding your own story in silence. Sometimes the people we love change so slowly, we don't even realize we are losing them until we are already standing in the empty space where they used to be. It is not your fault. You did not break them. You did not fail them. And you do not have to go on bleeding just to prove you love them. Love is not proven through suffering. It is proven through staying soft, even when the world teaches you hardness. Now, before we part ways tonight, I want to tell you that there is another story waiting on the next page. Another woman, another truth, another secret we have carried in silence for far too long. It is about a girl who tried her whole life to be easy to love, because every time she cried, someone told her she was too much. She learned to apologize for having a heartbeat. But one day, someone finally told her the truth. You were never too much. They were simply not enough. That story is for next time. For now, rest your heart. Let Lily's story sit with you. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself soften. Let yourself be human, because you are, and that is enough.